Welcome back to our series on Plato's Republic. In this episode, I will be finishing up Book 3 of the Republic and spend a little more time discussing the nature of education, specifically musical education, and its relation to physical education, and the way in which physical education is at the service of the musical education that it has received. So there's an ordering to education. And this is something that I think we all intuitively understand, even if we don't fully understand the concepts of musical education and physical education. We intuitively understand that to be formed requires a previous formation. So to be willing to submit yourself to a type of training, suppose you're training for a marathon or something, you might be fully committed to wanting to complete this marathon, and you print out your running program, and you see, okay, this is an 18-week program. You know, in these days I have to run these miles at this type of effort and what have you. And so you have this goal to engage in this training. But there's no way that you can conduct that training unless you have some prior training. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that you need to have prior running experience, although in the case of a marathon, that's probably true. But what I mean is there needs to be a type of training that leads you to execute the physical training. And this is often actually discussed. If you've ever read running, I've read a handful of marathon running books, and early on, one of the things they talk about is this idea of having the drive or the determination. It's partly a psychological challenge. Marathons are physically taxing, but there's something mentally taxing about them. There's something about the fact that you're doing the same thing for so long that is both a challenge physically and mentally. And the way that you are able to train for that joint challenge, that dual challenge, is going to be by both of those aspects. And so you need a type of, putting it very straightforward, you need a type of determination or a type of character if you're going to commit yourself to a successful execution of this 18-week training program. Many times you've probably found yourself in the situation of, I want to learn the guitar, or I want to learn this instrument, or I want to learn this foreign language. Or I want to read Plato's Republic, or I want to do this, and you have this this task, this goal, as desirable, and in many cases, it's a very good activity. It's a very good goal to have. It would be one that if you were to accomplish it, it would reflect well on you as a human being. Accomplishing the goal of finishing a marathon reflects on your character, not just on your physical abilities, but something on your character. At least what Plato is arguing in Book 3 is that's what the physical activity ultimately is for. It's for a reflection of one's character, and to be able to have a good physical representation, a good physical portrayal of your determination. That is, if you want a marathon or some other physical feat to reflect your character, your determination, you have to have that determination in the first place. And so I think what is happening is musical education, which is education of the soul, we'll say, is something you need to have in order to have the physical activity as an image or as an icon of this. And so I want to read a little bit about this in Book 3. Draw your attention to page 84 of the Reeves translation, or the Stephanus number 401b, and then I'm going to skip down to right around 402, but I want to read a little bit of this right here, right up front. So he's talking about the poets, and what the poets are capable of doing is, as he says, they're capable of embodying the image of a good character in their poems. So a poem, you could think as a written or spoken thing, is capable of embodying an image or imaging a character, a type of character. And where this goes is music does this as well. So music, the music you listen to, is a type of icon. It's a type of manifestation, physical manifestation of character, and we all know this, even if we've never stopped to think about this. The fact that music can elicit different emotions. Some music calms us, other music excites us. Some music is dark, other music is bright. We have this very complex physical representation of the inner life of the soul. And so what a musician or a composer is capable of is making that music affect or permeate, as Plato puts it, the soul, so that it forms the soul. To receive this type of formation, a good formation, if you want a good character, you have to encounter and be affected by good characters. And this can happen through literature, through poetry, and it can also happen through music. So here's how Plato puts this at just right before 402a. Socrates says, "Then aren't these the reasons, Glaucon, that musical training is most important? First, because rhythm and harmony permeate the innermost element of the soul, affect it more powerfully than anything else, and bring it to grace. Such education makes one graceful if one is properly trained, and the opposite if one is not." Okay, so for the first thing that music does is that there's a rhythm and a harmony, which permeates, as he says, the innermost element of our soul. So music can kind of take control of us, take over our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. It can motivate, it can depress, it can, it's sort of like a spirit that's breathed into us. So music has this ability to affect us more than anything else, he says, and bring it grace. It can actually be a gift. Music can be a gift to us. You feel inspired when you listen to certain songs. You feel like you have strength because of certain music, and this is to be formed well. Even if you don't know why this is inspiring, this music, if you don't know why this is, good for you, it's still the case that it is. Just as switching modes here to the physical education side of things, if you have to walk to school every day as a child, or if you play sports as a child, this is good for you. This is good, even if you don't know like why this is good, it's still forming you. It's making you a better human being. Hopefully, as we'll see, the goal is at some point you'll come to understand that there is a reason, there's a logos, there's a logic behind why this music is good for humans, human formation, why this physical activity is good for human formation, and the relationship between the two. But early on in childhood, you don't need to know why it's the case as long as you receive it. And once you receive that good formation, you're then able later on in life to reflect on, or as Plato puts it a couple pages later, to remember that formation that you have already received. You can understand what you are after having received a good education, which is a paradoxical thing, that you need education in order to come to know yourself. So it's a type of grace, it's a type of gift that you aren't in control of, namely this musical education. It's given to you. And if you don't receive this, then what Plato is saying is you're not going to be able to understand yourself. You're not going to be able to understand and identify what's good and what's not good. Or at the very least, it's going to be more difficult to do that. Another example, the more you are acquainted with good examples of character, say through reading novels or through your friends or your parents or your siblings, suppose they have good lives, they set good examples for you, the easier it will be for you to make decisions that are good about your own life. Also, the easier it'll be for you to identify which lives are good, that is, which you see someone, you can give an appraisal of that life, that type of life, because of those examples you've had earlier on. They become something like paradigms that you use to evaluate, to kind of hold up, to get an understanding about the value of a type of life. Okay, and then the second thing, which I actually just alluded to, the second thing Socrates says right around 402a is second, because anyone who has been properly trained will quickly notice if something has been omitted from a thing, or if that thing has not been well crafted or well grown. And so, since he feels discussed correctly, he will praise fine things, be pleased by them, take them into his soul, and through being nourished by them, become fine and good. Okay, so to receive this training allows you to identify what's lacking in people, and even to a certain extent what might be lacking in yourself because you've seen it in another. And so that allows you to have control over your own life, but you can only do that if you've seen the good in another. And this is something that musical training does, is it gives you, it offers you places within you this paradigm of proper order, proper virtue. The way to think of music is it's a type of harmony, that aims towards a goal, and this harmony is, quite literally the way that the notes come together with the right tempo and the right dynamics, like we were discussing in the last episode. But in the human life, we get a better understanding of what it is to exist harmoniously when we have experience of harmony, physical encounter, physical experience of harmonious being. And music is a perfect example of that. And then we can also, this is the point he's making, notice when we encounter something that is disharmonious, and we can become disgusted by the disharmony of that thing, even if it's not initially or primarily, I don't want to say primarily, not initially known. We don't know why it's disharmonious, but we can have some feeling, some gut reaction to its disharmony, and it becomes known in a real interior sense. And so then here's how it ends. This quotation from Socrates, 402a. What is ugly or shameful, on the other hand, he will correctly condemn and hate while he is still young, before he is able to grasp the reason. This is just exactly what we were saying. And because he has been so trained, he will welcome the reason when it comes and recognize it easily because of its kinship with himself. This is a beautiful passage in that what it presents to the reader is that like knows like. Similarities are drawn to similarities. And what I think is so profound about this is that you will come to know the reason if you incarnate the reason. If the reason is already in your soul through this musical education, then an understanding or the logic of the reason in an explicit manner will come to light because in some ways you were already acquainted with it. You already know it. In one sense, what you're trying to then do after you've already received this musical education is you're trying to make what's implicit in your life, in your soul, you're trying to make that explicit. You're trying to bring it out, present it, so that you can get a clearer understanding of why this is a good life. And I think this is one of the functions of now transitioning to physical education. One of the functions of physical education is that what it does is it takes that same training, the musical training, that harmony that you've learned through the musical training, and it crafts the body. It crafts the individual physical life to become a sign or an icon of that. So the way to think of this, I believe, is the type of harmony that you experience through musical training. That form is then reformed in a physical way, which is the forming of myself so that I conform to that same harmony. Now it's an analogy in a sense, because I'm not literally making my life a piece of music, but what I am doing is I'm making my life harmonious, and so there's no possible way to make my physical life harmonious unless I have already encountered what it is to be harmonious. And so I get the form from music, which I then try to incarnate in physical activity. And this is something that, going back to the original example at the beginning of this episode of say, marathon running, there's a type of determination, a type of perseverance that gets incarnated and known through the physical activity, right? So what it is to have perseverance, what it is to be determined, for you becomes clear once you engage in this marathon training program. You understand yourself as a determined individual, an individual with fortitude. because of this physical training. So the physical training makes yourself known to yourself. You become known through this physical training, and it's not just a test. Am I really virtuous? Do I really have fortitude? It's not just a test. Rather, it is a showing. It is a revelation, and in a sense, it's an incarnating. It's a making real of that virtue. Right. So, how does the virtue of charity get made real? How is the virtue of charity actually incarnated? It's through the activity of an individual. It's by laying down one's life. You wouldn't have charity if you didn't do those physical acts of sacrifice for another, those acts of love for another. Likewise, you wouldn't have self-determination if you didn't do physical acts of self-determination. And so it's a way of not just testing, but a way of living and making oneself that way, right? Because that's what the harmony, or that's what the virtue is. Virtue is supposed to be enacted, and not just supposed to be enacted. We can say even something stronger. Virtue is for enacting, right? It has as its goal activity. So this ordering or directionality of the musical training into the physical training is, returning to what we talked about in the last episode, indicative of there being not an opposition between the body and the soul, but rather something like a mirror. The body mirrors the soul. It's the image of the soul. It's the picture of the soul, or maybe better yet, it's the incarnation of the soul. The body incarnates the soul in a way that it's not to say these are different things, right? The ink on the page incarnates the word, right? And it's not like the ink and the word are entirely unrelated, disunified things. The ink and the word have to be understood as one. And this has significant philosophical consequences, but it has really significant theological consequences, because I think this lies at the heart of understanding the incarnation as well, so that that the Son is not just this thing opposed to this man that was born in Bethlehem, but rather there is a real unity between the God and the man. It's not like that. It's not just simply that the man is an image in an extrinsic way, so that this is a man and he just tells us things about God, but rather there really is a type of intrinsic unity between the man and the God, the man and the second person of the Trinity, such that there is one person there. And I think that is analogous to what is happening here, leading into, or maybe leading back into this discussion of Platonic hylomorphism, where the image, the physical image of something, the body, it's a physical representation or a physical incarnation of harmony, which just is the soul. So it's the physicalizing of the soul. It's the making physical of the soul, and it's not an extrinsically or an externally related thing, but its relationship is internal. The soul and the body are internally related, and I think that's the idea you get through this discussion of the physical and the musical training or education, both pointing you towards the same end, which is an understanding of goodness. And this is something that is going to bear itself out in politics, but also in ethics, in an understanding of the good of the state and an understanding of the good of the individual. The harmony is ultimately going to be the same in form. And this ultimately, as we see in Book 3, comes through an education from childhood. That is, we receive this truth or receive this order before we even know it. And what we then try to do is we try to then make our actions reveal to ourselves that education which we have already received.